Last night Veronica Miles, 35, stood in my parents' living room in Mobile, Alabama, as they sneered. "You have 48 hours to leave this house." Their voices were sharp, their eyes cold, convinced I was a failure, a nobody beside my sister, their shining star. They thought I was broke, clinging to scraps of disappointment they could discard. I didn't argue or plead. I stood still, my silence holding a secret. Something I'd done days earlier that would turn their world upside down. Let me take you back to where it all began, because family isn't always the safe haven you believe it to be. Growing up, I was always the outsider in my own home. My parents never noticed my ambitions, only my sister's flawless victories. They flaunted her awards and perfect image while treating me as the mistake they had to tolerate. Get a real job, they'd say, their tone dripping with disdain. Last night's ultimatum wasn't new. It was years of judgment condensed into one cruel demand. They expected me to pack up, leave Mobile, and disappear quietly. But they had no clue what I'd been building, what I'd achieved behind their backs. I wasn't the failure they imagined. I had already changed everything, and soon they'd see just how wrong they were. This isn't just about proving them wrong, it's about what happens when the people who should lift you up try to break you down instead. Stay with me because you won't believe how it all unfolds. Have you ever been dismissed by those who should know you best? Share your story in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. I'm reading every single one. It all began in a quiet Mobile suburb where I was always the odd one out. Growing up in Mobile, Alabama, I was never the daughter my parents wanted. My father, Stephen Miles, a retired restaurant manager, and my mother, Ann Miles, a former high school teacher, devoted all their attention to my younger sister, Wendy, their pride and joy. Wendy was everything they dreamed of: a straight-A student, a prom queen, and, later, a brilliant surgeon married to a wealthy husband. Me, I was the odd one, the girl who dreamed differently, the one they never understood. From as far back as I can remember, family dinners were performances built around Wendy's success. "Your sister's going to save lives," Dad would say, his voice brimming with pride, while Mom nodded, her smile reserved for Wendy's latest accomplishment. My passion for renewable energy, those late nights sketching solar-powered systems, earned only eye rolls. "Stop daydreaming," Veronica, Mom would snap. "You'll never make it with those wild ideas." I'd bite my tongue, swallowing the sting, knowing they'd never see me the way they saw her. By high school, I had become invisible, buried under Wendy's trophies and flawless grades. I found comfort in science fairs, tinkering with circuits, and imagining a world powered by clean energy. My late Aunt Beatrice, a brilliant engineer who once worked on early solar projects, was the only one who saw my potential. She would sit with me for hours explaining photovoltaic cells, her eyes alight with the same fire I felt. "You've got a spark, Veronica," she'd say, handing me books on sustainable tech. "Don't let anyone dim it." Her words became my lifeline, especially after she passed away when I was 20, leaving me a small inheritance of $25,000. It wasn't much, but it was a seed, a promise that one day I'd prove them wrong. After college, I landed a steady job at a local energy firm analyzing grid systems. It paid the bills, but my heart was set on creating something of my own, something that could change how businesses used energy. At 27, I took the leap, quitting my job to start EcoPulse Solutions, a platform helping small businesses adopt renewable energy affordably. I poured everything into it: my savings, my nights, my soul. Aunt Beatrice's $25,000 covered the basics: a laptop, a tiny office in Mobile, and a prototype that barely worked. I was all in, my family completely out. The first time I mentioned EcoPulse at a family gathering, Dad laughed so hard he nearly choked. "A startup in Mobile?" he scoffed, wiping his eyes. "You're throwing your life away." Mom didn't bother to hide her disappointment. "Why can't you be more like Wendy? she said sharply. My sister sitting across the table stayed silent, her perfect smile frozen as if my dreams were too ridiculous to acknowledge. Their words cut deep, but I didn't argue. I'd learned long ago that defending myself only made it worse. Year after year, I still showed up for those dinners, enduring the same jabs, still chasing that pipe dream Dad would sneer. "When will you get a real job?" Mom would add, her tone dripping with pity. Wendy never defended me, never asked about my work. Eventually, I stopped sharing and stopped trying to explain. They didn't want to understand, and I didn't need their approval. But every cruel remark fueled me. Back in my cramped apartment, I'd work until dawn, tweaking code and pitching to investors who didn't believe in me either. 50 rejections in a row, 50 times, I heard no. Yet Aunt Beatrice's voice echoed in my head. Don't let anyone dim it. I wasn't just building a company, I was building a legacy. EcoPulse wasn't about proving them wrong, it was about proving myself right. Each late night, every failed pitch, every moment I wanted to quit, I thought of Beatrice and her faith in me. I kept going not for them, but for her, for the spark she saw. And slowly, EcoPulse began to take shape, though my family never knew. They looked at my old car and simple clothes and assumed I was struggling. Let them think that I told myself. Let them underestimate me. While my parents mocked my dreams, I was building something they could never see. In a small apartment in downtown Mobile, I poured everything into EcoPulse. At 27, I'd walked away from a stable job, betting everything on a dream to make renewable energy accessible for small businesses. My savings, my nights, my sanity, all went into a prototype that flickered more than it worked. Aunt Beatrice's $25,000, her final gift before she passed, bought me a laptop, a desk, and just enough hope to keep going. Her words, "Don't let anyone dim your spark," echoed in my mind, pushing me through the grind whenever doubt crept in. The first year was brutal. I pitched EcoPulse to anyone who'd listen: investors, tech meetups, even local shop owners in Mobile's sticky coffee shops. 50 rejections in a row. Too risky, they'd say, or renewable energy won't sell here. One investor even laughed, telling me to stick to something practical. I'd smile, thank them, and go home to work harder. The prototype slowly evolved, still clunky but mine. I coded until my eyes burned, learned logistics from scratch, and survived on cheap takeout. Beatrice's belief in me became my anchor. She'd been an engineer in a world that doubted her, and I refused to let her faith die with her. Family dinners were another kind of battlefield. My parents never asked about my work. Instead, they'd gush over my sister's latest surgery or her new house. "When are you giving up that hobby?" Dad would smirk, carving the roast. Mom's pitying glance was worse. "Your sister's saving lives," she'd sigh. Wendy, perfect as always, stayed silent. I stopped talking about EcoPulse altogether, letting their mockery slide. Why bother? They saw my old car, my worn shoes, and assumed I was failing. I let them think it, channeling their scorn into fuel for my late-night coding sessions. By year 3, EcoPulse began to gain traction. I landed a contract with a small bakery in Mobile, helping them cut energy costs through solar power. It wasn't much, but it proved my idea worked. Word spread: a hardware store signed on, then a cafe. Every deal was a fight. Endless meetings, skeptical owners, banks that wouldn't take a chance. I didn't care. Each no made me sharper. Every small win built my confidence. Beatrice's seed money was long gone, but her voice wasn't. "Keep going," I'd hear as I refined my pitch for the 100th time. The turning point came in year 6. A regional retail chain in Alabama with 10 locations showed interest. They wanted a full-scale energy overhaul, solar battery storage, the works. I barely slept for months, designing a custom system, negotiating with suppliers, and hiring my first employee, a young engineer who believed in my vision. When we delivered, the chain's energy bills dropped 30%. That success put EcoPulse on the map. Local newspapers featured us, and suddenly the same investors who'd rejected me were calling back. I didn't need them anymore. I'd bootstrapped my way to stability. Still, I kept it quiet, especially from my family. They didn't deserve to know. Their indifference never changed. At one dinner, Dad joked, "Still tinkering with your little project," Mom added. "Maybe your sister could find you a real job." Wendy just sipped her wine, silent as always. I'd nod, bite my tongue, and leave their words echoing as I drove home. They thought I was wasting my life, but each contract, each late night brought me closer to something bigger. EcoPulse wasn't just a company, it was my rebellion, my proof that I didn't need their approval. By year 8, EcoPulse was serving dozens of businesses across Alabama. I'd built a lean team, a solid platform, and a name in mobile's growing tech community. I still lived modestly, saving every penny to reinvest. My parents saw my frugal life and assumed I was struggling. Fine by me, they'd never understood my vision, so why tell them otherwise? Beatrice's faith still guided me, her spark brighter than their doubt. I was 34, and EcoPulse was no longer a dream, it was thriving and about to change everything. By the time I turned 34, EcoPulse had caught the attention of a major corporation. In a sleek office in Mobile, I signed the deal of a lifetime. At 34, after 10 months of intense negotiations, I sold EcoPulse Solutions for $48 million to a major energy corporation. The pen felt heavy in my hand, not from hesitation, but from the weight of what it represented. Every sleepless night, every rejection, every lonely step I'd taken had crystallized in that single signature. Bound by a non-disclosure agreement, I kept it secret even from Rita Hogan, my former CFO and closest friend. As for my family, they were the last people I intended to tell. Their years of scorn, calling my work a hobby or a waste of time, made their ignorance my sweetest victory. I didn't transform my lifestyle overnight. I still drove my beat-up sedan, wore the same faded jeans, and lived in my cramped downtown apartment. To everyone else, I was still Veronica the dreamer who'd never quite made it. That suited me just fine. The deal was sealed, but I wasn't ready to celebrate publicly. I wanted to savor it, to keep this triumph close until the moment was right. My plan was simple: reveal it at a family dinner, place the contract on the table, and watch their faces fall. After years of belittlement and comparison to Wendy, I'd earned that moment. But family dinners were emotional minefields. That week, I sat across from Mom and Dad, their words as cutting as ever. "Still playing with that little startup," Dad smirked, carving the roast. Mom didn't even look up. "Your sister was promoted again," she said proudly, beaming at Wendy, who sat poised, soaking in their praise. I gripped my fork, forcing a smile, saying nothing. They had no idea about the deal, the millions, the empire I'd built from nothing. I let their words roll off, imagining the day I'd let the truth speak for itself. Maybe then their arrogance would finally crumble. The negotiations had been exhausting. For nearly a year, I flew back and forth to Atlanta, facing corporate teams that dissected every inch of EcoPulse, its finances, tech, and infrastructure. Rita, who'd left for a larger firm a year prior, became my unofficial mentor. Through countless late-night calls, she refined my strategy and steadied my nerves. "You've got this," she'd remind me whenever I wavered. The final deal included a consulting clause, keeping me on board for a smooth transition. $48 million. It still felt unreal, but I kept a low profile, blending into Mobile's quiet streets, holding my secret close. With the deal complete, I began mapping out my next move. The money wasn't just for me, it was my chance to honor Aunt Beatrice, whose faith had carried me through the darkest years. I dreamed of launching a foundation in her name, helping women innovators who were underestimated like we once were. I hadn't told anyone, not even Rita, but the vision grew stronger every day. I'd almost revealed everything at that dinner, ready to silence my family's mockery with proof. But something stopped me. Their smugness, Dad's smirk, Mom's sighs, Wendy's indifference didn't deserve my revelation. I'd show them through action, not words. Then came Friday. My phone rang. It was the corporation's lead negotiator, his tone clipped impersonal. "We're restructuring the transition," he said. "Your consulting role is no longer required." My stomach dropped. The money was secure, but the decision stung. After building EcoPulse from the ground up, they no longer needed me. I sat in silence, staring at the signed contract, my victory suddenly hollow. I could already imagine the whispers around, mobile rumors twisting the truth, my family assuming I'd failed again. But they had no idea what was really coming. That Friday, a single phone call turned my world upside down. I walked into my parents' house in Mobile expecting an ordinary dinner. The table was set, the air thick with tension, but something felt different. My father's jaw was clenched, my mother's eyes distant. They'd heard from a family friend, someone connected to the corporation, that I'd been let go after the EcoPulse sale. To them, it wasn't a $48 million victory. It was proof I'd failed again. They didn't know about the money, the negotiations, or the years of work I'd poured in. All they saw was another disappointment, and they were done pretending to believe in me. Dad didn't waste time. "You've got 48 hours to find a job or get out of Mobile," he said, his voice sharp as he cut his steak. Mom nodded, her lips pressed thin. "We're done supporting a dreamer." Then came the blow that stung most. "And don't bother coming to Wendy's birthday party. We don't need your drama." My sister sat silently, eyes fixed on her plate. I felt my chest tighten as their words hit, each one heavier than the last. I'd built something from nothing, yet to them I was still a failure. I didn't argue. I stood, grabbed my keys, and left, their ultimatum echoing in my head. Back in my apartment, I trembled, not with fear but fury. They thought I'd been defeated, that I'd crawl away in shame. They were wrong. I was done hiding. I called Rita Hogan, my former CFO and closest ally. "They think I'm nothing," I told her, my voice steady despite the ache. "I'm going to show them who I really am." Rita didn't hesitate. "Then let's make it impossible for them to ignore you," she said, her tone fierce. We stayed up past midnight, sketching out a plan to turn their rejection into my greatest statement. First, I'd honor Aunt Beatrice, the only one who'd ever believed in me. I'd allocate $6 million to launch the Beatrice Miles Foundation, a nonprofit supporting women in renewable energy, visionaries like her, like me, who the world tried to silence. Rita, with her finance background, mapped out the structure: grants, mentorship, scholarships. It would be powerful, a legacy that outlasted both of us. I could almost hear Beatrice's voice whispering, "Keep going." This wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about building something that mattered, something no one could diminish. Then, I'd reclaim my place. I'd buy a $3 million waterfront villa in Fairhope, just 30 minutes from Mobile, a sleek, glass-walled home overlooking the bay. No more cramped apartment, no more rusted sedan. I'd move there not to flaunt wealth, but to live freely on my own terms. Rita found the perfect property online: 5 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a panoramic view of Mobile Bay. "This is you," she said, grinning. "Let them see it and choke." I laughed for the first time in days, the weight finally lifting. The rest of the money would stay invested, growing, giving me freedom to dream bigger. My parents' words still stung, but they also fueled me. Their ultimatum wasn't my end, it was my ignition. They thought they could erase me, exclude me from Wendy's celebration, and push me aside. But I wasn't disappearing. I'd walk back into their home, not as the daughter they pitied, but as the woman who'd built a fortune they couldn't fathom. Rita and I refined the plan. I'd face them calmly, armed with proof: the foundation's documents, the deed to my new home, and the truth they'd never imagined. Saturday was spent preparing, my resolve hardening. I wasn't just standing up for myself, I was standing for every time they'd dismissed me, every praise they'd reserved for Wendy. The foundation would launch publicly, a declaration to Mobile and beyond. The villa would be my new start, a symbol of freedom, not revenge. Rita promised she'd stand beside me through it all. By Sunday, I was ready. My pain had turned to purpose. Sunday evening, I drove back to my parents' house, Rita sitting beside me. Standing in my parents' living room, I was ready to end their delusion. Rita stood beside me, her quiet strength grounding me as I faced them, Dad, Mom, and Wendy sitting there, unaware of the reckoning ahead. They believed their ultimatum had broken me, that I was still the disappointment they'd always seen, the daughter who'd never measure up. I gripped the folder in my hands, proof of everything they'd dismissed, and felt a spark ignite inside. This wasn't just about vindication, it was about reclaiming my truth. I didn't wait for their usual remarks. "You've got it all wrong?" I said, my voice steady, slicing through the silence. I didn't get fired. I sold EcoPulse Solutions for $48 million. The room froze. I opened the folder and slid the contract across the table, the figures gleaming in black and white. Dad's fork slipped from his hand. Mom's eyes widened as her knuckles whitened around the tablecloth. Wendy, always composed, stared in disbelief, her perfect poise unraveling. I continued, unwavering. "I've bought a $3 million waterfront villa in Fairhope, and I'm launching the Beatrice Miles Foundation with $6 million to support women in renewable energy. Women like Aunt Beatrice who believed in me when you never did." Dad finally spoke, his voice rough. "Veronica, we didn't know." I cut him off. "You didn't want to know. You called my work a hobby, a waste. You told me to leave Mobile to stay away from Wendy's birthday." I turned to my sister, her silence deafening. "You never once asked about my dreams. You let them tear me down." Mom stammered, "We were just trying to protect you. Protect me." The words rang hollow, just another excuse for years of rejection. I lifted the villa's deed and the foundation's charter, each document a symbol of what I'd built without them. "I don't need your protection," I said, my tone firm. "I never did." Wendy finally found her voice sharp with accusation. "You could have told us, Veronica." "Why keep it a secret?" I laughed, short, bitter. "A secret I spent years trying to share. You mocked me, compared me to you, the perfect surgeon. You never cared to listen." Dad's face flushed crimson. "We're your family," he snapped, as if that excused everything. I shook my head. "Family doesn't issue ultimatums. Family doesn't choose one daughter and discard the other." Rita squeezed my shoulder, her calm presence anchoring me. I exhaled, the weight of years slipping away. "I'm done chasing your approval," I said quietly. "I'm done with your pity, your judgment, your silence. I'm done with you." The air thickened, heavy with disbelief. Mom reached out, her voice trembling. "Veronica, please, let's talk." But I was already placing the folder on the table, the final mark of my closure. "These are copies," I said. "Keep them, read them, or don't. It won't change who I am." I turned to Rita, her nod a signal of strength, and walked toward the door. Dad's voice followed, sharp and desperate. "This isn't over." But it was. I didn't look back. The door closed behind us, the sound slicing through the quiet, mobile night. For years I'd craved their respect. Now I understood I didn't need it. I had built my own life, my own empire, without them. Rita and I stepped into the cool night air, my pulse racing but my chest light. I had spoken my truth, not from anger, but from freedom. They had underestimated me, written me off, but I had risen beyond their reach. The villa in Fairhope waited, a new chapter unfolding. The foundation would carry Aunt Beatrice's legacy forward, empowering lives they'd never touch. I wasn't the daughter they wanted, but I was the woman I'd chosen to become, unapologetic, unshakable. Rita hugged me, her voice soft. "You did it, Veronica. You showed them." I nodded, the last remnants of their judgment falling away, their faces, Dad's flushed anger, Mom's trembling denial. Wendy's stunned silence lingered in my mind as I drove off. They had tried to erase me, but I left them with the truth they couldn't ignore. I had built EcoPulse from nothing, turned it into millions, and carved a future they would never claim. This wasn't revenge. It was liberation. I was done carrying their expectations, done letting their words define me. The road to Fairhope stretched ahead, my new life waiting. A week later, my family tried to worm their way back. My parents called, their voices suddenly sweet. A week after I'd left them stunned in their mobile living room, Dad's gruff tone was gone, replaced by a syrupy warmth I didn't trust. "Veronica, we should talk," he said, as if his ultimatum had never existed. Mom chimed in, her words dripping with false concern. "We're family, sweetheart. We just want what's best." I gripped my phone, sitting in my new Fairhope villa, the mobile bay shimmering outside my window. Then Wendy's voice joined in, smooth and calculated. "We've always supported you," she said. "Supported me?" I almost laughed. Their sudden kindness wasn't love, it was greed. The truth came quickly. Dad cleared his throat. "You've got all that money now. We raised you, gave you everything. Don't you think we deserve a share?" Mom jumped in sharper. "We sacrificed for you, Veronica. It's only fair." Wendy added, "I could use some help with my clinic's expansion." I leaned back, their words echoing the years they'd dismissed me. They didn't care about my success, only the $48 million I'd earned without them. I kept my voice calm. "I built EcoPulse alone. You mocked it, told me to quit. You don't get to claim this now." Their tone changed instantly. The sweetness vanished. Dad's voice hardened. "Don't be selfish, Veronica. People will hear about this." Mom snapped, "We'll tell everyone you abandoned your family." Wendy's threat was colder, clinical. "I have friends on social media. They'll spread the word how you turned your back on us." A chill ran through me, not from fear but from their audacity. They thought they could bully me into submission, tarnish the name I'd built. I ended the call without a word, their threats hanging in the air like smoke. They'd underestimated me again. I wasn't the same woman they'd pushed around. I called Rita, steadying my voice as I explained their demands. "They're threatening to smear me online," I said. Rita, ever practical, didn't flinch. "Then we shut this down now," she replied. She connected me with a lawyer in Mobile, a sharp woman named Karen Wells, who specialized in defamation and harassment cases. Karen didn't sugarcoat it. "They can post what they want, but we can hit back harder," she said. We drafted a cease and desist letter outlining their threats and demanding all contact stop. "Any public statements," Karen warned, "and will pursue legal action for defamation." I signed the letter, my resolve firm. It was mailed to my parents' house and Wendy's clinic, a clear line in the sand. The fallout came swiftly. Mobile's tight-knit community caught wind of the truth, not the lies my family tried to spin. A local journalist, tipped off by one of Rita's friends, investigated EcoPulse's sale and my foundation's launch. The article spread online, chronicling my rise from dismissed dreamer to multimillionaire philanthropist. It mentioned the family tension vaguely, no names, just enough to suggest their rejection. Neighbors whispered, friends distanced themselves from my parents, and Wendy's clinic faced cancellations. Their threats backfired. They'd painted themselves as opportunists, not victims. I didn't gloat, but a quiet satisfaction settled in. They'd tried to ruin me, but the truth exposed them. I stayed focused, refusing to let their chaos pull me back. Rita and I met in Fairhope to finalize the Beatrice Miles Foundation's structure, ensuring its grants would empower women in renewable energy. The villa, with its sleek design and sweeping bay views, became my sanctuary, a place their voices couldn't reach. Karen later called with updates. My family hadn't responded to the letter, but their silence was telling. They'd backed off, their threats empty, without leverage. "They're isolated now," Karen said. "You're free. Free." The word washed over me like a tide. I'd carried their judgment for years, but now it was gone for good. My parents and sister never called again. Their attempt to claim my success had cost them their standing in Mobile. I didn't wish them harm, but I didn't mourn their fall either. They'd chosen to see me as less, to demand what I'd earned alone. Now they faced the consequences, not just my rejection, but the community's. I'd built my life without them, and I wasn't looking back. The foundation, the villa, my future, they were mine, built on my terms. With my family out of my life, I turned toward what lay ahead. The launch of the Beatrice Miles Foundation lit up Mobile. Held in a sleek downtown venue, the event drew a crowd of entrepreneurs, energy executives, and journalists' faces glowing with anticipation. I stood on stage, heart steady, sharing the foundation's mission $6 million to support women in renewable energy, giving dreamers like Aunt Beatrice a chance to rise. Rita, my anchor, stood in the wings, her proud smile keeping me grounded. The room buzzed with excitement, questions flowing about grants and mentorships. I answered each one with clarity, every word, a tribute to the woman who'd believed in me when no one else had. That night, Mobile's business elite didn't see me as the failure my family had claimed, but as a force shaping the city's future. My parents and sister tried to reach me afterward, calls, voicemails, texts, their tones now desperate instead of sweet. "We can work this out," Dad said in one message. Mom pleaded, "We're still family." Wendy's note was curt, "You're making a mistake." I ignored them. Karen, my attorney, had ensured their silence with the cease and desist letter, and I had no reason to reopen that wound. Their voices faded into the background of my new life. Mobile's community had already turned on them, neighbors stopped inviting them to gatherings, and Wendy's clinic became the subject of gossip about greed. Word spread not of my supposed betrayal, but of theirs. A friend mentioned Wendy's marriage was unraveling, her husband worn down by the scandal. I felt no joy, only a quiet resolve to keep moving forward. My Fairhope villa became a sanctuary. The 5-bedroom home with glass walls overlooking Mobile Bay was more than a house, it was a statement of freedom. Each morning I'd wake to sunlight on the water, coffee in hand, feeling the weight of years slip away. Rita often visited, helping me shape the foundation's first grants. We'd sit by the bay, mapping programs to empower women whose ambitions had been dismissed just as mine once were. The work wasn't only a legacy for Beatrice, it was my way of rewriting the story I'd been told about myself. I wasn't the disappointment they saw. I was Veronica Miles, the woman who'd built an empire from nothing and turned pain into purpose. The community's response was overwhelming. Local papers featured the foundation, calling it a catalyst for Mobile's growth. Entrepreneurs reached out to collaborate. Women wrote letters sharing their struggles and gratitude, thanking me for giving them hope. I read each one, humbled by their courage, and reminded why I'd fought so hard. My family's rejection no longer defined me, it had become a distant echo. They'd tried to claim what I'd earned alone. I'd chosen to rise beyond them. Looking back, I learned something vital. Family isn't always a refuge, it can be the storm you must sail through alone. My parents and sister saw my success as theirs to own, but I'd built EcoPulse with my own hands and heart. Their dismissal had taught me to find my worth within, to carve a path no one else could define. Freedom isn't granted, it's taken one decision at a time. You decide who you are, not the voices that try to drown you out. To anyone listening, I'd say this: don't wait for permission. Build your value, your vision, your life. Those who matter will see it. Those who don't can't diminish who you are. One evening, I stood on my terrace, the bay reflecting the fading light. Mobile stretched before me, a city that had once felt too small for my dreams. Now it was where I'd made my mark. The foundation thrived. My villa stood as a symbol of strength. I'd faced rejection, threats, and doubt, yet I'd emerged stronger. My family's absence was no longer a wound, but an empty space I'd learned to accept. I had Rita, Karen, and a community that saw me clearly. I had purpose. I had freedom. I had truth. As I looked over Mobile from my new home, I realized something simple but profound. I no longer needed their approval. I had my own.